will make a very quick introduction as you're putting Dr. Kaifouli.
Yes. Go ahead, Alex. You take it away.
Yeah. As you are putting on Dr. Kaifouli presentation online and bringing him online, I just wanted to, and since we're running very short on time, I just wanted to highlight that Dr. Li Kaifu, or Kaifouli, is one of the giants in artificial intelligence and in the venture capital world, specifically pertaining to artificial intelligence. So you can read his bio in the abstract book and online. He's extremely well known, but something that is not well known about Dr. Kaifu is that he influenced several generations of scientists and entrepreneurs who went into first computer science and then into AI, and now are going into multiple domain areas and are influencing the industry in a very dramatic way. He is kind of the father of and a seed investor in several super unicorns that have achieved $10+ billion valuations and many, many unicorns. So he is the unicorn maker and the unicorn feeder, and also the educator and the author who influenced the lives of the many. In China and globally, he has more than 75 million followers. That's unprecedented in artificial intelligence. So pretty much everybody with some human intelligence is following Dr. Li's work. And currently he has a book coming up. It's the book on the future. It's 2041. So looking at the future from the futuristic standpoint. And I highly encourage you to pre-order his book on Amazon or on any other portal in your country. To ensure that you secure a copy, because I'm pretty sure the supply is going to be very limited. So Dr. Kaifu, please take it over. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alex. You're making me blush. So it's a real pleasure to be able to come back and give a talk at this wonderful conference again. And today, my talk is going to be on AI and healthcare, and as it relates to longevity. My expertise is in artificial intelligence, not so much in the healthcare space. But let me first start by telling you something about AI. The AI that works today, usually called machine learning or deep learning, is something very different from the human brain. And whereas the human brain is able to conceptualize and make abstract thinking and think strategically and creatively and able to select a few things to think about. AI, as in deep learning, learns by data. It doesn't learn by if then else, but so it must have a huge amount of data, and it's really good at doing quantitative optimization, and it can individualize learning for each person. So for each person, you may get something different, just like my Facebook newsfeed is different from yours. My Amazon recommendations are different from yours. And this has, I think, major implications for healthcare. But AI is not very good about reasoning, common sense, insight. It has no compassion and no real breakthrough creativity. So in some sense, human and AI are meant to be symbiotically working with each other. And as you've heard me say, AI today is all about big data. So for application in healthcare, the big question is, will healthcare have enough data? And that's why I am a huge optimist about healthcare being AI's greatest area of application, and why my investment company is making many big bets in healthcare, in particular in the cross-section between healthcare and AI, for the very reason that a lot of data is happening and healthcare as an industry is being digitized. On the left side of the slide, we see that not only are we talking about radiology, pathology, but also data from wearables tracking us 24/7, and also biodata from IVD, multiomics, many things that doctors could not be taught and could not possibly comprehend and integrate can be digested by AI hungrily as nutrients as it makes smart decisions, not just in diagnosis, treatment, but also monitoring, long-term care, preventive maintenance, and so on. The right-hand side actually shows the richness and depth and width of all the possible data for a particular person. And that comes from Harvard Medical School. No doctor can digest all that data for a patient, but AI can. So that's why I'm optimistic. Of course, AI hasn't always been successful in healthcare. Famous Project Watson, with lots of brilliant people working on it, did not end up being successful to date. And actually, the fundamental reason from my perspective is that, well, first, I think Watson tackled a very big problem. All cancer, that is too big, very big. I think we should go one sliver at a time, maybe just lung cancer or breast cancer, and maybe just over radiology initially and then scoping over time. The other, I think, significant issue highlights the problems when doctors work with AI scientists, because doctors learn medicine by having carefully selected few examples that are ideally suited to teach students at a medical school. But AI takes all data, the more the merrier. They have to be reasonably labeled, marked, but they don't have to be perfect. AI can train on a large amount of data and is naturally somewhat resilient with respect to small amount of inaccuracies. So in the medical profession, people want a small number of perfectly selected data. In AI, scientists want all the data in the world. And in the case of IBM Watson, partnership with esteemed medical institutions really restricted the amount of data that they had. So that was what made it difficult. So some suggestions going forward about AI and healthcare working together. First and foremost, we got to make sure, because if we want AI to work, AI cannot work without a large amount of data. There is no data like more data. So 4 requirements, large being the most important, but also structured, well-labeled, accurately labeled, and a closed loop. If you got all that data, then you're in business. But the other part is equally important. While the technology of AI requires a lot of data, we have to respect AI for that. The application is going into the healthcare industry. And a lot of AI scientists just think, if I developed a great radiology program, it would be used in every hospital. But that's really not so simple, because the healthcare industry has a value chain that is long and deep and complex, with many stakeholders, with channels, decision makers. It's just very complex for a hospital to insert a piece of software in the workflow that they have. One has to respect that. The other thing is AI, in some sense, is a little bit threatening to practitioners. A radiologist may feel that the AI is out to take his or her job, as would a doctor, a physician, even a general practitioner. So it's important for the AI researchers to really become humble, build technologies that are not intending to replace doctors, but develop them as tools which the doctors will have the final approval for the purpose of abiding by laws and regulations and responsibility, accountability, and malpractice. That's something that must be done anyway. So I think if both the healthcare side, medical side, and the AI side give a little, try to meet in the middle, I think we're going to see a lot of promising applications. And we see applications in many areas, because as all this data is gathered, if they're trying to be deployed in ways that are meaningful and feasible for the healthcare industry, we can see lots of examples. One non-controversial area that everybody loves is using AI to help drug discovery become faster. My introducer, Alex, is the CEO of In Silico Medicine, which developed this phenomenal capability of building a platform to using deep neural networks to help scientists find cures for drugs faster by hypothesizing the possible targets and the possible chemical structures that are more likely to succeed. And it's been demonstrated to cut down the cost of parts of drug discovery by 90%. So if the whole drug discovery process could be cut down by 90%, that means we no longer have to go after just blockbuster drugs for $1 to $2 billion. We could spend 1/10 as much money and find many and afford to do research on rare diseases currently incurable, or produce many different types of treatments for common diseases and use the one that's most appropriate for particular individuals. So I think this potentially isn't just a speeding up or reducing costs, but changing the future of healthcare. Another area is multiomics. That's an area that is just way too much data, almost a gigabyte per person, and just the genomic sequencing. And humans don't know how to read it, haven't studied, only work has been put in on a few percent of the sequencing, but the rest is just lying there. But AI can perhaps make sense out of that. So one of the other companies we work with is Hugo, and what they do is work on infection diagnosis based on each individual's gene data, and tries to figure out the appropriate diagnosis based on the individual, factor in the multiomics. And as I mentioned, precision medicine is another area. This is a company we not our portfolio, but a really good progress showing that for different types of people, maybe different types of treatments can be individualized. And that's a great beginning to look at people as clusters. But eventually, I think each individual might actually receive a very different treatment. That is the big promise of AI. And I think that will need to eventually become real in terms of precision medicine. Another quite different area is medical robots. And we think about intuitive surgical, the Da Vinci robot, but actually robotics is advancing very quickly, aided by the capabilities of AI. For example, computer vision, multiple sensors have advanced tremendously and are being used in autonomous vehicles and factories for visual inspection. A much nimbler arms are being built, and much more powerful AI learning algorithms. So I really see this being greatly expanded to areas like orthopedic, as well as in the areas of bones and teeth and teeth implant, neurosurgery, and so on. And I think, again, because of accountability issues, initially, these will be robots operated by surgeons. But over time, I think certain tasks can be delegated by the surgeon to the robot to become a more efficient and more accurate process. And also, we know that some surgeons may not be able to continue to work as they age because their hands may shake or something. But but they have so much experience and wisdom, so this can extend the potential time that a surgeon can contribute meaningfully and save lives by essentially become the stable arms that can be used by older surgeons. So I think this is another great example of symbiosis. Now, the purpose of this gathering is about aging and longevity, and that's a great way for AI to be applied. I think the more nascent a field, the more power AI can be. Because there isn't some existing practice that AI needs to compete with, but rather longevity is a fairly open area. So AI can be used in places where it's a fit with researchers to really advance that. And we work with a company called Deep Longevity, and most of the work I talk about is done by the researchers there, but I'm very proud of the work that they have done. And the work they've done first is on the left side to use AI to identify attributes of aging. So you train a neural network with all the different measures from the person, and you can train the first pass to teach the neural network to identify the age. And then you can further train the network to identify whether they may have some health problems or disease. And then you can go in and examine the network and see what parts of caution or treatment or adjustment in lifestyle might be needed to make them healthier, and would that also make them younger? So that's how healthcare and aging might be combined. On the right-hand side, we see that people's capabilities improve as they grow up, and then when they reach their 30s, the body goes downhill, as we all know. And what we hope that AI can potentially do is make that trajectory a little bit longer. So not only are we extending people's lifespan, but also we're extending the quality of life. And that AI might be used to find optimal strategies in terms of lifestyle, reducing stress, sleep, exercise, nutrition, medicines, and nutrients. So the way this could work is a technology called transfer learning. And transfer learning effectively tries to train the network to predict the person's age and then look at what are the factors that would make the person maybe younger and healthier, and propose possible ways to do that. This initially could be done by a doctor or by AI, or working together. So I think this is an experiment that is progressing. And an idea from the Deep Longevity company is the idea of a deep aging clock. There are actually many types of clocks, and the idea of an aging clock is to use a particular type of data, compare it with data from other people of different age, chronological age, to see what is to train the network to properly predict the age of the person. And then in doing so, a new person coming in, without telling the age, it can estimate how old you look. And that is the biological age. And that could be trained on blood data. That's the lower part, deep hematological aging clock. It could be trained on a microbiome and very accurately from deep methylation aging clocks and so on. Could also be trained from your photos. It could be trained on almost anything, including surveys. So because everybody has different type of data, so we can initially train one type. Maybe the most common is the blood data. And I actually underwent this experiment, and these have reasonably accurate prediction capabilities. For example, mean estimated error is about 5 years. It could be as little as 2 years. So fairly accurate predictors of your age. Then I think on that basis, we can see, okay, what changes do I need to undergo so as to fool the network to think I am younger than I am? And the more I can do that, then the healthier I must be, because I must be closer to someone who is 5 or 10 years younger than me. So that is the idea. And the website and an app called young.ai is able to integrate many different types of data into what's called age metric, which is a master predictor of one's health. Ultimately, this can integrate all kinds of information into this combination of neural networks that will estimate your biological age. So on the right side, you actually see my real data. My chronological age is 59. And when I started first using young.ai, I was predicted to be 59, no more or less older or healthier than my actual age. But in 1 year of use, I am now estimated to be 53, mostly because I have a wonderful doctor who is an expert in longevity and healthcare and can analyze the output of these age clocks and give me targeted advice. I also see advice coming out of young.ai, and I combine these two to really, I'm a really data-driven person. So when I see the data, I want to improve my number. I'm also very competitive. So I want to see if I exercise a little, can I get the numbers down? If I slept better, and what are ways to sleep better? And if I ate healthier, and if I took different types of nutrients and medicines, and I am all actually able to do scientific experiments on my body to see how the age clock comes out as I change my lifestyle. But also, if you just want to see if your cholesterol comes down, you can do that as well. So it's been a interesting, fun, and also a very positive experiment that I have done. So one could treat this as a way to make us live longer and healthier. We could also treat this as just an annual exam. I've also entered another longevity institute, which performs a much more in-depth analysis of my body, and that includes not just the extensive blood tests, but also gene sequencing, as well as very advanced MRI and CT. And all that information initially will be viewed by a doctor, but gradually, I'm sure either Young.ai or some other technology company will integrate more and more of these aging clocks together to make more accurate predictions and therefore more accurate advice for me. So other than longevity, health exam, this could also be used for finding bottlenecks, what things to fix. It can be used to do analysis on populations or gender or individual countries. It can be used as a way to reduce insurance premiums. So there are many possible applications of this to be used. One of the most interesting extension is to go from doing tests on blood or something else. But what about human psychology? What if we ask the person 20 or 30 questions? So the new paper written by Deep Longevity basically asks two things. One is a bunch of questions to determine psychologically how old you are, and another set of questions to determine how old do you think you are? How old do you perceive yourself to be? It turns out both of these are very accurate and valuable predictors that are very comparable with other using blood and other approaches to estimate the biological age, but also that they are very good predictors of mortality, that if someone perceives himself or herself to be 5 years older than they actually are, then they have twice as large a chance of dying within a certain period of time. So I think just as the other age clocks can help us improve the way our blood measures us away from our other metrics, I think the psychological clock can also give feedback and help to make us more healthy psychologically. This is an example of some numbers being shown that we can actually plot people on this graph. And there is hope to take people who may currently be depressed and with the feedback from this model, make themselves psychologically healthier and also contribute to longevity. So I think this is a great field, and I look forward to working with people in this field to advance the state of AI and longevity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Kai-Fu. That was really a fantastic and fascinating talk. We have some questions on the Slack channel. So remember, people in the audience can also ask questions on Slack, but there's also going to be a microphone passed around. But we have maybe time for 2 questions. We have a tight schedule. There's a question from Tomas Schmauk Medina. You mentioned there could be pushback by medical doctors due to the feeling that they might get replaced. Do you feel the same has or is happening among biomedical researchers?
I personally do not. We're investors in a lot of biologists, and I think scientists do not currently feel the sense. I think partly because AI has been demonstrated only to be symbiotic with scientists and help make them more productive, help amplify their capabilities. And I think for some time to come, that's not likely to be the case. I have some friends whose kids are about to go to medical school and they ask me what they should study. And I would generally say, well, not radiology, probably not pathology, probably not diagnostic ophthalmology, but doing research. That's a great thing that AI cannot do, and AI can even help you be a better biologist than you are.
Great, thank you, Kai-Fu. There's one question from the audience here.
Hi, Kai. I was wondering, so medical records are extremely sensitive data. how do we make sure that there's no misuse of such important asset, personal asset, actually?
Yeah, I think globally the governments are protecting this data much better than before. But we face a dilemma that if we don't have the data, we can't train the AI. So I think there are several possible solutions. The most straightforward is anonymization. Remove as much personal data from the records and still pull them to train. The second step is using a technology area called privacy computing that is using, federated learning, for example. It keeps your data in the hospital to which you've licensed your data, and then across hospitals they combine the models, but they never share your data. So that's using technology as a way to protect individual data. But I know there's still some people who still feel extremely uncomfortable. But fortunately, we don't need every human being's data in the whole world. So I think we'll get enough to get the training going, and maybe societies that are more willing to contribute data, either after anonymizing it or some other way, can build models that can be shared by more countries. It's a way to perhaps globally work together.
That's a great message. I think we will stop now. Kai-Fu, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time. Let's give another round of applause.
Thank you.